My name is Raymond Dahl. For many reasons, I'm an average Irish guy, though most people would regard me as an unusually lucky guy until I became involved in serious problems. At the age of 38, I had most of what people dreamed about. I was proud to have 2 nice daughters, a lovely wife, nice home, many friends, a good job, and a new car. Even the horses had been running my way. Of course, I had never won any big jackpot, but as the old saying goes, many a little makes a nickel. I had enough to afford some extra. The truth was that I wasn't born with any golden spoon in my mouth and had worked hard to get what I had today. To be honest, my wife Sandra played a very important part in my happiness. Without her support, it would have been very difficult to get things running our way. During a winter holiday trip to St. Anton in Austria, I found myself in the company of 3 friends. At our hotel, we encountered 2 stunning Irish girls seated at a large table. True to form, my friends embarked on a conquest for the most attractive among them, leaving Sandra a solid 7 out of 10 for me without any competition. As one friend succeeded in winning over his chosen girl, the others realized that Sandra, perhaps the best choice among them, had already set her sights on me. To everyone's surprise, our connection endured for the entire holiday. Despite a suggestion to swap partners, I politely declined, opting to stay true to Sandra. Back home, Sandra and I continued with our relationship, and after a few months I moved to her hometown where I got a plumber job, and when the owner retired some years later and left for the sunny climate in Spain, I bought both the business and his house, which has developed very well since then. Sandra and I married 2 years after we had met. I had never had any thought about cheating Sandra, and until recently I've had a very difficult time thinking that she ever did that to me, though as handsome a girl as she must have gotten plenty of more or less serious suggestions during the years. Then I met Marie-Louise, which changed everything for several people in our lives. It happened at an information and training course for a new version of the administration program I used at my job. At class we worked in teams of 2, probably because the consultant who held the course had a much easier job when the participants could solve problems without asking him for help. I had been chosen to work together with Marie-Louise, who had not arrived when the course started. The consultant told me that Marie-Louise had rang him and was on her way, and due to her old-fashioned double name, I expected her to be in her 60 seconds. That was okay with me because I had met several elderly ladies with a good sense of humor who had been very keen with computers. 10 minutes later, the youngest and prettiest girl in the whole class came in, introduced herself as Marie-Louise, and sat down next to me. Marie-Louise was a bright and easygoing girl, so we had no problems with the new programs. We worked very well together and had plenty of time to small talk during the lessons. She told me that she was 25 years old and was responsible for the administration in her hometown leading ladies' fashion shop. The course was a 2-day event, and it was she who suggested us going out together for dinner at some nice restaurant. I knew a place in town where we had a good time. Back at our hotel, Marie-Louise told me that she had a boyfriend, in many ways a nice guy, but they had an increasing problem in their relationship and asked me if she could talk about it with me. She had nobody in her hometown. She wanted to talk about such very private problems. She said that she felt that she could trust me. I accepted, and she suggested her room instead of the hotel bar I had suggested. We went to her room and sat down at the table. After fixing the light to semi-darkness, she began talking about her boyfriend. He was a good and handsome guy in many ways, but their sex life was far from what it ought to be between 2 people of their age. She couldn't resist sobbing when she continued her story. When she felt comfortable with it, I let her talk without interrupting her. Here is my short version of her much longer story. When they met, he had been a real gentleman without any attempts to get her laid. At first she was proud of his good manners, but then after 2 months without any attempts from him, she began to be worried that something was wrong in their relationship. She decided to have a serious talk with him about his non-existent interest for sex, and didn't buy his explanation about waiting to the wedding night, and had told him that there would not be any wedding night if they could not get sexual satisfaction in their relationship. He was a good guy, but she could not think about a marriage without a good sex life. Even he understood that, but he felt the pressure, and why their first attempts ended in total fiasco. They tried to rent spicy videos, but he found them disgusting and told her that they were totally against everything he believed was the right thing to do. She had not had enough experience during her earlier short relationships, and that is why they had slipped into some kind of status quo. She asked me how my wife and I had done when we met. I told her the truth, that we had met at a hotel abroad during a holiday trip and had great sex only a few hours after we met at the hotel bar. Because it felt right for both of us. We had never regretted what we did. It was a good beginning and one of the reasons why we continued our relation back home. Of course, there were several other reasons why we had fell in love. After a while, Marie-Louise suggested I show her what to do to get her boyfriend into action, and we ended up in bed. After that, we had a good sleep until next the morning, when we had a good session again before I went back to my room for a shower, clean underwear, and a shirt. When I left her room, a middle-aged woman in the next room opened her door, saw me coming out of Marie-Louise's room and shouted, "Shame on you," to me. I didn't care. I met Marie-Louise at breakfast, which was a real pleasure. After the course ended at noon, Marie-Louise and I slipped away to my room for a brief rendezvous before we had to vacate the premises. Following a shared lunch, we exchanged contact information and agreed to keep in touch as friends. Surprisingly, I didn't feel overwhelming guilt for my actions. Instead, I hoped that I had provided some assistance to Marie-Louise in her relationship. Although I hadn't divulged my own relationship issues to her, I sensed a growing tension between Sandra and me since her promotion 6 months ago. When I inquired about it, Sandra attributed it to the need to adjust to her new responsibilities. While this explanation seemed reasonable, it left me with a lingering question. What did Sandra do for recreation during her business trips? I had queried her several times about her preference for staying overnight at the county capital, just 90 kilometers from home, when visiting the company's main office for training or other tasks. I had told her that I could not understand why they stayed overnight when they could have been home at 5 or 6, and even jokingly asked if she had a lover there, which would get her angry as a wasp. She had told me that they used to work long hours when they were there in both the company, and their union demanded them to rest before driving home. Now, when I knew how easy it had been for me to do what I had done, and that it must be much easier for a beautiful woman as Sandra, I decided to find out the truth and do something next time she went there. Back home, everything went on as usual for a week before shit hit the fan. When I came home from my job, I found 2 suitcases in our hall and a furious Sandra in the kitchen. She shouted at me to take the suitcases and go to hell or wherever I preferred, but she wanted me out of the house as soon as possible. No doubt about the reason for her wrath. She shouted, "How could you do that to me and the children? I could never think that you were such a cheap creep. Who in the hell have put such silly thoughts in your mind? People have seen your shameless behavior at that damn course." My attempts to calm her down failed, and she didn't listen to my explanation. "It's not what you think. Please listen and let me explain." "Nothing to explain. Can you deny that you spent the night in that bimbo's room? Can you?" She had problems and wanted to talk about it, and now you've got a serious problem. That's for sure. After some further arguing back and forth, she calmed down so much that we could have an agreement. Her parents were at their summer house at the coast, and I could live in their house for a while until we found out a solution. I understood that it was the most serious problem in our marriage and accepted to move out because she usually calmed down within a few days, and any further arguing at this level would do more harm than good. I checked what she packed in the suitcases and completed it with some more things I regarded as necessary. When I was loading my things into the car, she came out sobbing and suggested I call the kids, but not her, neither at home nor at her job. She promised to call me when she had anything to say to me. I left her with a "hope to see you soon." Of course, I felt like a pile of shit when I sat in her parents' living room watching some nonsense on TV that evening. How in the hell could Sandra get information about Marie-Louise and me? It must have been that damn witch who shouted, "Shame on you," to me. It's incredible how much effort such a moral watcher can use for making problems for people whom they didn't even know. I promised myself to kick her ass if I ever met her again. I could only hope that she didn't succeed in finding Marie-Louise's boyfriend and throw her crap in his face too. I went to my work as usual, talked every day with my kids, but didn't ask them very much about what their mom did or what she had told them about why I was living in their grandparents' house. They told me that the only thing their mom had told them was that adults needed some time of their own now and then, and I would came home again. I took it as a positive sign that Sandra didn't use the kids against me. She even took my mail to her parents' mailbox. I must confess that I missed her like all hell and was sure that I would never cheat on her again if there was a happy end to this matter. To my great surprise, Marie-Louise rang me one day and had some questions about what we had learned at the course. I must confess that I was happy to hear her voice again, and after solving her problem, I asked if anything had changed for the better with her boyfriend. She sounded sad when she told me that it had been worse. After coming home, she had told him that she had missed him very much. During the first night at home, she had been very careful in her attempts to get him interested in sex but got no response at all. She had asked him why, and he had told her that he loved her very much but didn't care a shit about sex. If sex was so important for her, she could feel free to find a lover and get it once a week elsewhere. She refused and had demanded him to see a doctor for his problems, which he refused. She became desperate and gave him an ultimatum. See the doctor at the time she had booked for him or their relationship was history. That time was 11:45 a.m. next Monday. When Marie-Louise asked about my wife and me, I told her the truth that Sandra had kept me in the freezer for a while, but I felt it was high time for a solution one way or another. She told me she was very sorry and asked me if I was mad at her for causing my problems. I told her that nothing was her fault and I didn't regret anything of what we did because it felt right then and I would never change my mind in that matter. My words got a happier tone in her voice in her reply about hoping that Sandra wouldn't do anything stupid. When I mentioned that next week both of us could be out of our relationships, I asked, "What will you do if that happens?" She replied with a laugh, "Find the Mr. Right and get married." I was really surprised and asked her, "Get married? Your Mr. Right will be the luckiest man on the earth." "No, not yet. He doesn't know about my plans. My boyfriend is still my first choice if he will pay attention to our problems." We ended our talk by promising to call each other the next week, as soon we knew anything. My feelings after talking with Marie-Louise were very divided. Indeed, talking with her had put me in a good mood, but I was sorry for her because our night at the course had not been of expected advantage for her. I couldn't deny that I had a slight feeling of envy for the lucky fellow who would get such a dream girl if her boyfriend was stupid enough to skip the doctor. Less than 1 hour later, Sandra rang me and wanted to see me during lunch. She suggested I get a salad from a popular takeaway place and meet her in a park rather near her job. I accepted. She didn't say anything further, so I was a bit nervous about what she wanted. I was there a few minutes early and she came on the dot. She was nicely dressed in a short skirt and a jacket. She sat down next to me and crossed her long legs. She was beautiful, and I can see that none of the men who passed our bench on the aisle besides it could resist the temptation to stare at her nice legs. She noted that too and gave the men a warm smile. Her polite behavior against me gave me a slight hope about some kind of fair solution to our problems. I said, "I love you, Sandra. Please forgive me and let us be friends again." "Please, Sandra, can't we?" She looked at me in silence for several seconds before she replied, "I can promise you that all my hot feelings for you have not faded away, but I want to date you for some time before I can make my final decision about our future. What about beginning our new relationship with a date at my annual organization party tonight, if you don't mind? Spouses are invited and I've already put you on the list. I'll do everything I can to save our marriage." "Good. I think if we can make it without any arguing, it will be a very good beginning. I look forward to a pleasant evening." "Me too, if you accept my conditions for our first date." Conditions. Isn't good behavior enough? Obviously it wasn't. Her conditions were that I should be sober during the whole evening, catch her at her fellow worker Nellie's house, and drive them to the party and back home. Perhaps she allowed me to stay overnight when we were back at our house. I was a bit puzzled by her conditions and asked, "Isn't Nellie married? Won't her husband be joining the party? Why don't we go together to Nellie's place, considering it's our first date?" I found her conditions a bit peculiar and suggested that she invite her friends to our house instead if I wasn't invited to Nellie's. I even offered to cover the cost of a taxi for them. Sandra's response was less than courteous. She replied sharply, "No thanks. You can either accept my terms or skip our date." Feeling like I had no other option, I reluctantly agreed because I was eager to reconcile with her and salvage our marriage. The annual salaried employees party was a highly anticipated event in our small town, primarily because the union always booked some of the most popular dance bands in the country, and the tickets and bar were generously subsidized. For many members, it was their sole interaction with the union. As usual, office people from different companies meet. New relationships are created, both secret ones for that very night and even many long-lasting. Some old relationships will be terminated when the temptation for greener grass gets too strong. That evening I was outside Nellie's house just in time, and 5 minutes later a giggling Sandra came out together with a rather sexy woman and 2 men. One of the men got into the front seat, Sandra in the middle of the back seat with the other man on her right with his left hand behind her neck. They continued giggling with each other without caring about me. After about 1 minute, the man in the front seat made an attempt to light a cigarette. I told him that it was a smoke-free trip, which made him begin arguing, and to my surprise knew that I never allowed smoking in my cars interfered with. What the hell? Let him smoke if he wants to do that. I stopped the car and told him, "Feel free to smoke as much as you want, but outside the car." He was obviously Nellie's husband, because she told him to skip it, and we continued our journey to the hotel where the party was held. Once again there was some arguing when I drove straight to the parking lot instead of the main entrance. Sandra gave me some sour comments when I told her that we were going together. She was totally different from the lovely Sandra I had met in the park during lunch and had ignored me during the whole trip. I began to fear the worst for the evening. How right I was. At the bright light in the building, I noted that Sandra and her friends' eyes didn't look as they ought to. No doubt they had taken some drug and I wasn't invited to their party. After some mingling, I obviously was invisible for Sandra. It was time for the dinner, which was held on small tables for 4 around the dance floor with couples sitting together. As expected, Sandra's boyfriend had taken the seat next to her, which had me feeling like the poor camel must have felt when it got the last straw on its back. I gave him a light clap on his shoulder and said, "Sorry, Charlie, you were sitting on my chair." All four at the table began smiling and Sandra told me, "Be a good boy and find a free seat at some other table. I'll talk to you later," which caused a loud laugh from the three others. I had enough and shouted with a loud voice, which got people staring at us. "Piss off from my seat before I count to 3. I don't think they had expected anything like that from me because it put a stop to their laughs, but not any attempt from Sandra's boyfriend to rise up. 1, 2, 3. At 3 I hit him hard in his face with my right fist, which caused him to fall back with the chair. In an attempt to stop him falling, I gripped his hair with my left hand but got only a tape in the grip when he fell back and hit the floor with his head. I threw the tape on the table, which got Sandra and Nellie screaming. When the tape man laid down on the floor with one leg on each side of the chair, I couldn't resist the temptation to give his balls a hard kick with my heel. He began wriggling like a worm. I took the ice water pitcher from the table and poured everything over him. Thereafter I took the tablecloth and dragged it up in the air, so everything on the table fell on Nellie and her husband and shouted, "You damn drugged assholes wanted to play nasty games with me." Sandra began shouting, "I'll divorce you. I'll divorce you." I shouted back, "I look forward to that. You damn drug-abusing company 304. Tonight, you are out of my house." The whole incident had only taken a few seconds and nobody tried to stop me when I left the dance hall. In the car and on my way to Sandra's parents' house to collect my belongings, the remorse hit me and I asked myself, what the hell have I done? But then I calmed down and I asked myself, what the hell had Sandra done? After a quick stop at Sandra's parents' house, I hurried home to my own. The house was dark as expected and I went in. Everything was as usual except that there was an empty ice bucket and a tray with 2 champagne glasses and a red rose on the kitchen table. A third glass stood beside the tray. In the fridge, I found a bowl of strawberries and a bottle of French champagne. Sandra wanted to celebrate something, but why 3 glasses? And why 2 glasses on the tray and 1 beside? I decided to take a closer investigation of the house. Nothing unusual was to be seen in the living room. But in the bedroom there was a new red sheet in the marital bed and large bunches of red roses on both nightstands. Sandra had made the room ready for a romantic love night. The only question was, who was the lucky man? After her behavior earlier that evening, it could hardly have been I was at the toupee head I had kicked in the balls. Now it was clear why there were 3 champagne glasses. The third glass must have been intended for me while she and the toupee head screwed in my bed. Sandra must have gone totally mad if she could even think that I would accept such a humiliation in my own house. That was why that silly humiliation took place at her union party. She must have known that several of the guests at the party were members in my golf club and who wouldn't want to play with me if I had acted as the spineless wimp she expected me to be there. How could she hate me so much a few hours after our pleasant lunch in the park? She was right that divorce was the only possible solution now. I folded the red sheets and laid them at the doorstep with her ice bucket, champagne, and tray with 3 champagne glasses, strawberries, and a note in A4 size which read, "Sandra's 304 house has moved to a new site. Address unknown." Then I locked all 3 doors from the inside with boards from my workshop in the garage between the floor and the door handles so the doors could not be opened from the outside even when she opened the lock with her key. Only a few minutes later she came alone in a taxi, hesitated when she saw her things and the sign on the doorstep, rang somebody on her cell phone and walked away without trying to come in. A taxi came a few minutes later. If she was able to do what she had done tonight, she would even be able to be a nasty lady when she was away on her trips to the main office together with Nellie. I had accepted her silly explanation, though with doubts that made her furious, that it was a demand from their union they not drive when they were tired after an intensive day at the main office. If this Nellie and Sandra could take some drug, probably cocaine, before going to the union party in their hometown tonight, what could they do alone in the county capital? I decided to make a closer investigation for some kind of evidence about Sandra's possible screwing around and began among her private belongings. Nothing found in her drawers with underwear, neither any fancy sexy lingerie nor any sex toys or anything else of interest in the bedroom. Nothing strange in her dispatch case, nothing in her calendar, no secret codes, no strange phone numbers. We shared the desk in our home office with 4 drawers for each of us. I had never had any reason to look in her drawers before, but now I took a close look in them. Nothing in the first 3 of them, but the 4th was locked. I searched for the key, but didn't find any, so I opened the drawer with a bended nail and pliers. The first thing I saw in the drawer was a ring binder with Sandra's salary specifications, which confused me until I found out why she kept it behind a lock. She had taken some hours off at least one morning every month during the last 5 months. And when I compared the dates with her calendar, it was always the day after their visit at the main office. Under the ring binder was her private photo album from the time before she met me. She had showed it to me when we moved in together and nothing strange in it. Some old boyfriends and rather innocent party pictures. I opened it anyway and bingo. Between the sides in the album, I found 8 pictures probably taken with her cell phone's 2-megapixel camera. The phone was a birthday gift from me and she had been very glad when she got it. The pictures were printed out with a high-quality color printer and put the final full stop to my marriage. 2 were with a curly yellow-haired naked young man, probably a male stripper, at a bar obviously after the closing time because nobody else was on the picture. On the first photo he had laid his huge meat on a bar stool and a smiling Sandra, only wearing bra and panties, stood next to him and was measuring it with crown coins, which are almost an inch. It was impossible to see how many coins she had succeeded to lay on it. The next picture showed a topless Nellie, only in her panties. Following 2 pictures were taken in what must have been a hotel room. The first showed Sandra, with her jeans and panties down to her knees lying on a man's lap. The man pretended to spank her with his right palm, but both he and Sandra were laughing. The spanking couldn't be any serious matter, probably only a part of necking. But with her panties already down, she had obviously even been into some more serious actions later during that evening. The topless Nellie was on the next picture with the curly yellow hair. The next 3 pictures were taken at a hotel. A topless Sandra was on the first with a man in a white shirt and red tie lying on the bed with his trousers down to his knees. The same man was even on the next, but this time naked and drilling a naked Nellie from behind. In the last picture both Nellie and Sandra sat naked on a sofa. A closer look at the pictures showed that they had time and date. The oldest were taken about 5 months ago and the latest only 2 weeks before my adventure with Marie-Louise. The only possible question now was, what the hell did they do during those trips when they didn't took any pictures? Now Sandra's behavior was a real mystery for me. Acting as a real 300 for herself, she had planned to humiliate me as hell and make me a laughing stock for the whole town. Now I knew that she must hate me as hell. But why? A complete mystery for me with the evidence about her own wrongdoings in my hand. She could have confessed her own cheatings, and we could be even and forgive each other. One thing was for sure. All remorse for my behavior earlier in the evening was gone and would never come back. I decided that I had enough and didn't care to search for anything else of interest any longer. I locked the drawer, poured up a large whiskey, but as expected it was impossible to get any sleep afterwards. I wrote a text message to Marie-Louise. Dear ML, we promised to keep each other updated. Once again, I must say that I'm very happy for the time at the course. Tonight, it helped me to find out the sad truth that I'm married to a real 304 wife. I will get free from her much sooner than it would have been possible without her finding the truth after the course. Please call when you can, and I'll tell you one of the most incredible true life stories you ever heard. Your friend, RD. Marie-Louise rang me early next morning, and I told her the truth about what had happened yesterday. She listened without any comments, and when I came to a full stop she only asked, "What are your plans for the future?" "Divorce, of course, but don't know anything further. My boyfriend told me yesterday that he refused to see the doctor I had booked for him, so I left him. That's my story. What are your plans?" "Nothing yet. Any suggestions?" "Yes, it would be a pleasure to see you again. Of course on your terms." "Accepted." "Your terms?" "Don't have any. Let's meet and see what will happen." We agreed to meet already the next day at a hotel a short distance from her hometown. Then Sandra rang me, angry as a wasp, and shouted about the scandal at the party and that her job was in danger and everything was my fault because I was a damn creep. I responded, "Speaking of 304 seconds, have you retrieved your own brothel equipment from my doorstep yet? When do you plan to vacate the premises?" "Ideally, before the new owner moves in." "Interested in purchasing it? Your behavior is deteriorating day by day. Was there something you needed?" "You need to vacate the premises. The house is my private property, but feel free to take all the furniture. I no longer wish to sleep in your wretched brothel bed. Take everything except my clothes and some electronic equipment." "Are you serious?" "Yes. The children. The choice is up to them, but I bet it will be you. Your parents' house will be good enough for you. And then for the time being until you find something of your own. So, you don't have any objections to the divorce I mentioned yesterday?" "Of course not. It was the only same thing you said during your drugged and sane condition during yesterday evening." "Oh my God, it's not what you think." "No, I'm afraid that it is much worse. Bye." Sandra rang again 10 minutes later and wanted to have her car, clothes, and some other things. I accepted to load the car with everything she had requested and park it on the street with the key on the wheel. I had put her sex equipment in the trunk. She came in a taxi and took her car. Marie-Louise rang me and suggested we meet the same afternoon. I accepted and drove to the hotel. We took a long walk and had a pleasant time, even talked about our problems, which made each other feel much better. After a romantic dinner at a small restaurant, we called it an early evening. Back at the hotel and in the bed, Marie-Louise got serious and asked me about my plans for the future if I wanted to get Sandra back after letting her calm down for a while. I told her, no way, and asked her about her own plans for the future. She looked me straight in my eyes and said that she wanted to get married and have 2 children, and then continued with a low voice, "Do you want to share that future with me?" Marie-Louise, are you serious? Yes, Raymond, I love you with all my heart. I've been thinking about you every day since the course, but I didn't dare to say anything to you. I love you too, Marie-Louise. I really tried to fix my marriage, but from now on you are the one and only. Nothing more needed to be said in a long time because we got involved in making love and continued with that until we were totally exhausted after the third time and fell asleep. After an intensive morning sex, we went down to the restaurant for breakfast and a small talk about the future. Marie-Louise had no objections when I told her that I wanted to buy a new house and new furniture, and Sandra could take everything she wanted from the old house, and if she left something of value, I would give it to the Salvation Army secondhand shop. Marie-Louise promised to do her best to get a job in my present hometown. I think both of us had a positive surprise when we found out how many matters could get a solution without any different opinions at all, and when we had different opinions, how easy it was to get a solution with some giving and taking from both sides. I felt 10 years younger when I got back from the weekend with Marie-Louise and found out that Sandra had been in the house taking more of her things and left me a note on the kitchen table. It read, "Dear Ray, I love you very much and I'm very sorry for my stupid attempt to be nasty to you at the party. I had it totally wrong. Nobody can blame you for acting as a real man, and I love you even more after that. Everything you have done is forgiven and forgotten, and please forgive me for everything I did and said during that terrible evening when I had lost all common sense. Please give me a chance to explain everything so we can be a happy family again. I love you, Sandra, your loving wife." What bullshit. How in the hell could she say that she loved me if she had been cheating for months, probably with cocaine in her nose, and intended to screw that damn tube head in my bed? No way. I couldn't even think about taking her back. Monday was a busy day for me. First at the bank sharing our accounts, putting the house up for sale, and then to the court for divorce papers. Sandra rang me and I agreed to meet her on Tuesday evening at a restaurant for what she called a serious talk about our future. Probably not exactly what she expected. Marie-Louise was a bit worried when I told her about Sandra's note and that I had agreed to see her so soon after the scandal party. I understood that she feared that I would change my mind and forget everything I had agreed with her, forgive Sandra and go on with the marriage. I could hear some relief in her voice when I told her that my house was for sale and the only thing that remained to be written in divorce papers was Sandra's signature. I promised to call her after the meeting, but I feared Sandra would use the children against me. However, all decisions were already made and Sandra could only get minor changes. On Tuesday evening, both Sandra and I were on time at the restaurant and sat down in a discreet booth. I suggested waiting with the serious talk till after the meal. Once again, I realized that Sandra was a very handsome woman, and if I hadn't met Marie-Louise and hadn't found the cheating pictures, I would probably have tried to save the marriage in some way. After the meal, while we had coffee, Sandra opened the serious talk by saying, "Dear Ray, I'm sorry for listening to my friend's stupid suggestions about how to get even before forgiving you and not being the loving wife you expected me to be after our pleasant meeting in the park. I regret everything I did during that damn evening. I don't blame you for the damn mess, which almost cost my job. Please let me explain my plans for that damn evening, and you'll see that I had no intentions to do what you think about me. Speaking of the evening, how long have you been using cocaine?" Cocaine. Yes, I've seen enough of drugged people before, so I'm 100% sure that those 4 giggling idiots whom I drove to that party were drugged. Cocaine or some other substance. I saw your eyes in the bright light at the entrance, and I doubt that you've been foolish enough to engage in intimacy with the toupee-headed individual in my presence without that substance in your system. Firstly, it was only recently that Nellie received it as a gift from an old friend of hers, and we others were curious to try it. What about your rendezvous in our bedroom? Did you genuinely believe that I would allow you to engage with your toupee-headed acquaintance in my bed while I watched or waited for my turn? He is not my acquaintance. Ronnie is only a fellow worker who had to pay a terrible high price for helping me get even with you at the party. Have you screwed him before? Of course not. You have got a wrong opinion of everything during that evening. If you had agreed to eat at some other table, my intention was to come over to you after the meal, tell you that I had forgiven you and thereafter been together with you the whole evening. The bedroom, flowers, champagne, and strawberries were for you in my attempt to get a romantic restart to our marriage. That's the simple truth. Why 3 champagne glasses? There was a crack in one of them. That's the only reason. Sounds sensible, but I regret to say that there are too many weak points in your explanations. I don't think you've told me the whole truth. She got a stressed expression in her face when she replied, "I'm sorry if you don't believe me when I tell you the truth. What else do you want to know? The real truth about when you began with cocaine during your nights out with Nellie. So far I know about 5 months, but is it 6? How could you let such a damn slut take total control over you and let her persuade you to whoring and destroy your marriage? Am I totally wrong when I say that our marriage was better than average, at least until your promotion?" She blushed and got totally red in her face when she replied, "Our marriage was great until your course, but you were wrong again, because you ought to know that I've never been out partying with Nellie at any girl's night out. Of course not here in the hometown where people know you. Your wild nights out were at the county capital. I've checked with your job and with your union, and there is not any rule about staying overnight after being at the main office for some errand. At the main office, they told me that some days you were ready as early as at 3 o'clock and could have been at home no later than 4:30 or 5. You had hardly any reason to stay there overnight, at least not for resting. I know that you and Nellie took a few hours off the job the days after for resting. And you have paid the hotel with your own money, or the probability is that somebody did it for you, shall we say, as payment for your services. Are you accusing me of something? I opened my briefcase, laid her wanking photo on the table, and said, "Yes, I am." Sandra began to understand that the game was coming to an end. I didn't see any reason for not going straight to the main point. I told her, "Dear Sandra, I confess that I did something totally wrong when comforting Marie-Louise for her problems, which ended up in sex. Though there are never any excuses for cheating, I will never regret what I did because it let me know that you have been using drugs and cheating me for a long time. However, I was really in love with you until the damn union party, and after meeting you in the park I was happy as hell for getting a chance to save our marriage. Why, Sandra? Why the damn stupid games after my course? If you only had confessed your own cheating instead of pretending to be hurt, we could have called it even and saved our marriage. Why didn't you do that? Why be ruled by a damn 304 to a silly effort to humiliate me in the worst possible way? If you had kept some common sense in your drug brains, you would have understood that I'm not any spineless creep. I regret to say that now a divorce is the only thing for us during the present circumstances." She began sobbing. "I can explain the photo. It is not what it looks, and my only intention with Ronnie was teasing you for a short time. Please let me explain and forgive me. I don't care a shit about the top ahead. I'm talking about all your other cheatings." I gave her the spanking photo. She understood that the game was over and began to cry, but remained sitting in the booth. When she had calmed down after a while, I told her my suggestion about sharing our belongings. She accepted my suggestions and understood that all a lawyer could do for her was writing a big bill. She signed the papers I had in my briefcase. We remained in the booth for a half hour until she calmed down enough to drive home. Then we agreed to meet again within a few days for clearing up further matters and parted. It was a terrible evening even for me. I had dumped the mother of my children, a beautiful woman who had shared many happy years with me. I felt totally empty in my head when I came home to the empty house, which had usually been filled with happy voices and laughter. I felt like a relay hole, but knew that it had been the only possible alternative. After resting about 1 hour, I rang Marie-Louise, who understood my feelings because her own parting from the boyfriend was far from easy. We talked for a couple of hours and she told me she felt much better, and so did I the next day. I mailed bright copies of Nellie's sex photos to her husband together with a short letter. "Dear Cuck, I didn't like it when you and your 304 wife humiliated me at the damn union party. It is my turn to laugh. I've got Sandra's pictures of your 304 wife Nellie in action. I really hope you'll enjoy them as much as I did. Best regards, Raymond Dahl." It wasn't very friendly to send him the pictures, but why should I regard him as a friend of some kind after what he did to me during the damn party? One of my golfing friends, whose wife worked at the same company as Sandra and Nellie and had been rather close to the table at the party, rang me the next evening and told me that most of the people at the party had supported me and Sandra's gang had left the party only a few minutes after me. His wife had told him that Sandra wasn't a popular woman at the office any longer. She and Nellie had a serious argument, almost a fight, in the parking lot when they had arrived there today. 2 days later, he rang me again and told me that this morning Nellie had went into Sandra's office and hit her hard in the head with the keyboard and thereafter given Sandra a real blackout with her fist. Nellie was fired and Sandra was given the last warning to behave if she wanted to keep her job. The reason for Nellie's anger against Sandra was that her husband had almost turned crazy when he got the cheating pictures, lied to her that Sandra was the sender, and thrown her out of the house. 2 days later, Nellie's husband filed for divorce. I met Sandra the same evening. Nellie had been thrown out for discussing further details about how to limit the problems for our children in this sad matter. The large sunglasses could not hide the large black eye on Sandra's face. I told her that I knew the truth about it. She looked at me for a while before she said, "It was you, wasn't it?" "Yes, and it feels good that she got her just desserts." I signed the letter with my own name. So her husband told her a damn lie if he accused you of mailing the pictures. Who cares? Sandra accepted to skip all connection with drugs for getting the custody of our children, and to my great relief I found it easy to reach fair agreement about the children. Then I told Sandra that I had connected with Marie-Louise after finding the pictures. We had met at a hotel and taken the first steps to a relationship. But she had no reason to blame Marie-Louise for our divorce because my efforts to get even with her, save our marriage, and never cheat again had been my first choice, and I had been sorry as hell after the fiasco at the party. Thereafter I let her know that we would have gotten our divorce even without my cheating because I had planned to hire a retired police to find out what she did during her next trip to the county capital. Sandra got a strange look on her face when she replied that she had terrible remorse after her last trip and told Nellie that she would never again cheat and stay overnight. It was why she had become so humiliated and angry about my cheating and wanted to give me an unforgettable lesson to be sure that I never did it again. She told me that she had regretted it as soon as I had left the party. When I asked her why she had been screwing around and destroyed a happy family, she tried to explain that it had begun with Nellie taking her to a bar where she knew the owner, who invited them to stay after the closing time for a drink on the house. Instead of drinks, he had offered them a string of cocaine. Nellie had used it before and had persuaded her to try it. She got a real kick and accepted to join Nellie, the owner, and a young bartender in a strip poker game. The bartender had been stripped off rather soon and had both her and Nellie excited for a while before Nellie took him to their room at the hotel. She herself had remained at the bar with the owner and betrayed me for the first time in our marriage. Although she felt terrible remorse, she accompanied Nellie to the bar during their next trip because Nellie was infatuated with the bartender, or at least with his physical attributes. She confirmed, nodding, when I asked if he had curly, blonde hair. She, who had started to complain about unsatisfactory intimacy in her marriage, continued to see the bartender, who often had cocaine and usually a different companion with him when the bar owner was occupied elsewhere. Enticed by charming, amusing individuals and usually enjoyable intimacy, it became a habit she began to anticipate. Naturally, she often felt regret for the infidelity, but as it occurred typically only once a month and far from home, she hadn't been too concerned about being caught. However, she realized it couldn't continue indefinitely and decided to put an end to it. I acknowledged that she was correct about that, but it had likely concluded in a manner different from what she had anticipated. I couldn't help but mention that as a mentally sound and well-educated woman, she alone bore responsibility for her infidelity, and I would never accept the excuse that Nellie was to blame for the demise of our marriage. When I inquired if Sandra was involved with the toupee-wearing man, she denied it and stated that they now despised each other. She hated both him and Nellie for persuading her to act as a complete idiot at the party. He hated her for me making him a laughingstock at the office and among his acquaintances all over town. Nellie blamed and hated her for her own divorce, and Nellie's ex hated all three of them. My short time together with the foursome gang wasn't any highway to happiness for them. As soon as the word was out that Sandra was free, she had a line of suitors who wanted to date her, but for some reason she had not found any of them of interest for a relationship for the time being. I hope she will find some nice guy and be happy again. She rented a 4-room apartment and got the custody of our daughters, who see Marie-Louise and me very often in our new house. I was very happy, indeed, when the girls told me that Mom wanted them to be good friends with Marie-Louise, who is my wife nowadays. After a trip to Euro Disney in Paris, my daughters and Marie-Louise got on very well together. The girls found out that they had a good time together and they never accused her of taking their dad from their mom. Sandra and I are polite and correct to each other. Louise is pregnant with our first child and I've got a loving wife. Second story. I will try to make this as short as I can. This post may seem a little silly. I overthink and I do have debilitating anxiety that can cause some hardships in our relationship. Although when it comes to cheating, it has never crossed my mind until now. My BF and I have been together almost 6 years. We met in middle school and were really great friends. He has always been extremely loving and caring. There was never a doubt that he was loyal. However, in the past 2 years, we have been struggling in our relationship. I always sensed that he struggled mentally, finding it challenging to be vulnerable, especially since past experiences of vulnerability have led to hurt. While I don't want to excuse his behavior, he often phrases things in a manner that makes me feel inadequate or labels me as irrational. The specifics of what occurred are fuzzy for both of us due to his poor memory, but I still carry a sense of guilt and endeavor daily not to take everything personally. He's recognized that I've undergone changes, which he values, and he believes he can begin to open up once more. However, during serious discussions, it feels like he fixates on this issue. I don't hold it against him. Everyone copes with their traumas in their own time. In the early stages of our relationship, he did something that left a lasting impact on me and our intimacy, but we addressed it then, and I've since healed from it. Anyways, for the past 2 years I started to notice him struggling very badly mentally, and it has been affecting our relationship. He has been distant, cold, and just not there. I blame his job because every day he always says his job makes him depressed and not want to live, which of course I take very seriously. I do my best to be a good girlfriend and partner to lean on because it is not something he is used to dealing with head-on. He has always been the type to mask everything and push it aside. He is only just recently getting help because I have talked to him multiple times already over the course of a year and a half and finally gave him an ultimatum that if he doesn't start to change, I can no longer do this. He is constantly apologizing and says he is a terrible boyfriend. He got diagnosed with ADHD, which has changed a lot for us. I try my hardest to be patient because he can be extremely forgetful. and not listen to me in conversations. Last year, I began to notice a change in his behavior, particularly when it came to his phone. He became more secretive, often angling it away from me or hastily attending to notifications. Our intimate life suffered as a result, dwindling to nearly non-existent. During one drive together, as I gazed out the window, a notification popped up on his Apple CarPlay from a girl's name I didn't recognize on WhatsApp. Given that I'm familiar with everyone in his contacts, this struck me as odd. Though I feigned ignorance, focusing on the music playing, I could sense his apprehension in my periphery. Initially, I dismissed it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Despite his willingness to share his password in the past for music or directions, his recent behavior left me feeling uneasy. I have never will check his phone and have never felt a need to question him, even after that. I trust him. However, after the next few incidents, my gut is telling me otherwise. I see him getting snaps from random women when he shows me something on his phone. One time, he told me how this younger girl met him on Insta and he asked me how do I respond to her because maybe I know her. He never showed me the conversation but said he realized she was trying to riz him after some small talk. I said okay, it's not like you're obligated to respond. I catch him staring at other women and when he gets caught, he proceeds to make fun of those women and calls me way better. Like what LMAO? Whatever, right? He tells me every single instance he has with a woman and says he is being transparent. I guess he isn't used to getting hit on. I often catch glimpses of him looking at me with worry or almost looking scared. Am I crazy? I still have faith that he is just trying to be better for me, but I can't shake this weird feeling. He is almost trying too hard sometimes, but is still extremely loving and compassionate. He talks about marriage and our future together. I am just confused. Thank you for reading if you have gotten this far. Thanks for joining us on this chapter of Relation Tales. If you were moved by these stories, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss out on the upcoming emotional roller coaster of relationships. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to share more